What you're about to get access to is a training session that we recorded live. Now, of course, since all the sessions that we do are really, really interactive, we typically cut out the participants' names and images and videos in this case in order to protect their identity, right? However, the content was so good, we didn't want to keep it from you, right? So I encourage you, take a notebook, take a pen and paper, and do the exercises on your own. Pause the video whenever you need to. And of course, let us know in the comments below which exercise did you like the most? What are you taking away from the session? And I look forward to hearing from you. So let's get started.
And I want to start off with an exercise to kind of like ground ourselves. And this is also an exercise that you can take with you wherever you go and ideally practice in whatever environment you're in without anybody seeing what you're actually doing. I'm a big fan of any kind of stress relief being practiced in the way that it's invisible so that not everybody notices that, like, oh my God, you have to calm yourself down, all right? And you'd be like, we're not going to do that, okay? So, with the first one, I love using the breath to center ourselves, and you can close your eyes or keep them open. I tend to prefer to close them. In this case, I will guide you through a series of just breathing in and breathing out. We're going to breathe 4 seconds in, hold it for 1 second, and breathe out for 7 seconds. And best would be if you have your feet on the ground, both feet on the ground. I know we women sometimes like to cross our legs. Just make sure both are firmly on the ground. It helps you be a little bit more centered. And we're going to do this for about 2 to 3 minutes. And all you have to do is literally just like breathe in and out. It's easier to do it with closed eyes. Okay. So let's get started. I'm a count so that it's easier for you to follow. So just breathe in and out through the nose. We're going to start with breathing in, 2, 3, 4, hold, breathe out, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Last one, in, 2, 3, 4, hold, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can open your eyes if you had them closed. Now, what this does is when we breathe out longer than we breathe in, it activates our parasympathetic nervous system. So it automatically signals our body, you're safe, you are calm, and it's all fine. Even if your mind is going like 100, be like, right? So you can use this breath, and literally already 1 minute helps you change your physiological state. And I'll get into it a little bit later, why changing our physiological state is often so much better than starting off with our mind. Yeah? Now, I think most of you are new to the way I work and do this kind of like workshops. Typically, I keep about 30% for theory to give you a little bit of a background, and the rest is going to be all like practice and you actually doing things, right? Now, I want to look into why, well, what are we going to do first in the next 60 to 90 minutes, and we'll see how big the group is going to grow, or if we're going to stay like this. Depending on that, we'll finish sooner or later. We're going to look into some quick stress relief exercises. One of them you just practiced now. We're going to look into how you can switch more into calm within like 1 to 2 minutes or really quickly. We're going to look into how you can understand better where your stress really comes from. A lot of people think that their stress comes from certain external factors, and I'll help you understand more the internal aspects of that. And we're going to look at the preventative steps to help you avoid falling into the trap of burnout, because nobody likes to be burnt out. It's not fun. So we want to make sure that you don't even get to that point. Okay? So why should we actually care about reducing our stress? I looked up a couple of data points for you. And on a global scale, 61% of workers in the US say that workplace stress has a negative impact on their productivity, with 30% reporting that they missed at least 1 day of work in the previous month due to stress. So there is a cost to it. One is actually losing workforce if they are too stressed. And 1 day a month might not be a lot, but if we count up to like 12 days a year, then for example, in the US, that would be 2 additional work weeks that people typically get off as holidays. Now, on a global scale, depression, anxiety, disorders alone cost us $1 trillion per year in lost productivity. So it is measurable. All of these effects do have a cost on the economy and companies, and so really trying to reduce the cost and help with that in a broader scale, companies leverage revenue. Now, of course, I also looked into Saudi Arabia, and I was wondering what kind of data do we have available there? And I found a little bit. And there were especially researchers at the King Saud University that found that job stress and ambiguity increased employee turnover. And they also found that job stress and job dissatisfaction and job burnout are directly correlated. So typically one leads into the other, or one affects the other, right? And we've also seen that work-life imbalance leads to burnout. So all these aspects are correlated, and the sooner we catch them, the better it is, not just for people, but also for companies. So, now, I just want to make sure to see where you're at, and maybe that's just going to be like a little nod in your head. If you're currently overwhelmed by stress or struggling to make difficult decisions with ease and confidence, then you're in the right place here. And if you currently feel like you don't have time to stop working or take breaks, so there's always yet another thing in your to-do list, then you're also in the right place. And I hope that we're going to pattern interrupt here a little. Now, with all that, I just want to reiterate, you're not alone. It's how a lot of people feel. It's especially how people in high stakes jobs feel. It's how most people in corporate feel. It's especially how a lot of people that are labeled as high achievers are very successful feel. So a lot of times when people look as like very successful to the outside and very highly achieved, what we can observe is that actually internally they're really, really struggling. Now, but what we've also seen is all the hustling typically leads to burnout, bad decision making, and just feeling us stuck and frustrated. So we really want to make sure that we avoid even getting there. Now, I'll take you through a couple of low effort techniques to help you make difficult decisions with more ease and to solve negative stress before it takes over. And of course, while this is very workplace centered, all of these techniques can also be applied in your private life, right? Now, for all those of you that are new to my work, I just want to give you a quick background about me so that you know kind of like who's talking here with you and why all this background might be interesting and worth listening to. I now have more than 9 years experience as a global business owner. and more than 14 years experience in helping people all over the world grow to be the best version of themselves. So I've been hosting all kinds of like leadership, personal development workshops, and so on all over the world in the last like almost 15 years by now. I was also on the Forbes 30 and the 30 list a couple of years ago. I have a Harvard master's degree in psychology, so anything that you learn is based on the latest science, insights, and research. It's extremely important to me that we don't just do anything that's like woo, but we want to do everything that's like properly based in science. I used to work at Google, so I was in corporate one time a couple of moons ago. And I've been to over 100 countries, so there's a certain unmatched cross-cultural understanding. And I actually did my master's at Hult in Dubai, so I had the chance to live in the region quite a bit. Now, before we get into a couple more exercises about stress relief, I just want you to understand where stress actually comes from. This is extremely, extremely important when one actually wants to work on dissolving stress. Oxford says that a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances, which more relates to the outside. However, what we know is that stress it can be triggered by the outside, but it's often not necessarily caused by the outside. And what we also know is that there's positive and negative stress. So eustress and distress. So positive stress is when you really like your work, you have a lot of things to do, and you're fully engaged and you feel motivated. Negative stress, typically you can recognize that when you feel exhausted, when you are not motivated to do anything. And that's when you really want to make sure that you change something. And of course, again, I want to iterate, you're not alone. There are so many people who like go through this experiences because we've never been taught how to deal with stress. It's not part of our school. It's not part of like our university or any degree. Now, if we look at the historical origin of stress, we need to understand that in ancient times, stress was a crucial survival mechanism. It actually helped us survive because we had to be so alert. There were so many dangers in the world that we had to pay attention to, like there were tribal fights, and everybody pretty much just fought for their survival, right? Now, with that being said, our brain got trained to use stress as something that helps it survive. The problem just is that these days, we've had so much advancement that we live a pretty safe life. We don't need to be worried that if we go out, somebody's going to stab us or, another tribe is going to be after us. That's not the case anymore. We live a very safe life. We live a very long life. And in order to actually help prolong our life and live a longer life, we need to reduce that stress, because these days the stress typically just destroys our body. If you look at the physiological response of what stress actually does, is all your blood goes into your arms and your legs. So it goes away from the parts of the body, that life crucial organs that you need in order to actually function. Because when the body goes into fight or flight mode, it's like, I either need to use my arms to fight or I need to use my legs to run. But of course, if you're in a meeting and you're getting stressed because somebody might have said a word that like triggered you, you cannot do either. And so what ends up happening is, instead of us like running or being able to fight it, we internalize the stress. It stays in our body. If we don't express it through like sports or whatever, it keeps the blood clogged up. And when the blood cannot flow freely back from our arms into the legs and the brain and everywhere, that's how bacteria, viruses, and pathogens get caught in our body. And that's how it's much easier for our bodies to get sick. So the less stress we have, the more freely our blood can flow, the better oxygenated our body is, and the easier we can respond to any stressful situation that's out there. Now, in terms of today, we have pretty much 6 modern day stress triggers. And one is work pressure and deadlines. The other one is social media and digital overload. I'm sure there's a lot of you that can resonate with that. We got financial pressures and instability, which is real. Having financial instability or stress is one of the major worries one can have, because if you have that, you cannot focus on anything else in your life. information overload and decision fatigue. So these days, there's so much information flowing to us from our computers, phones, advertisements, and so on, that like in the evenings, you might have observed that yourself, it's much harder to make proper decisions in the evening than in the morning, because you've already made so many decisions during the day that your brain reaches a limit. Now, isolation and loneliness. This is actually very, very crucial, again, to our survival, because isolation and loneliness kills people at the same speed as when somebody's smoking. So those effects are correlated, which is why having a good environment, a good society, a good friendship circle really helps you live longer. And of course, an unhealthy lifestyle and poor work balance are a big reason for that as well. Now, what I would like for you to do is, and I'm going to post this link in the box here, I want to know which of these stress triggers you typically experience. And this is all anonymous. You can select up to 3 of them and just let us know, so we get a little bit of an overview where we're at. Here we go. So we can see that clearly work pressure and deadlines is the most pressing stressor here. And the second most common one is unhealthy lifestyle and poor work-life balance. Now, there are a couple of effective stress management techniques, and you might know most of them, to be honest. None of this is, I think, really new to you. First is regular exercise, right? Like we all know that sports helps us, so we're walking or any kind of like physical movement helps us. Mindfulness, meditation, and prayer, right? All of these are extremely important to reduce anxiety and promote emotional balance and to move more towards like a positive state of being. A healthy diet and adequate sleep, right? If this is a study that's been done, especially with men, for men that continuously sleep less than 6 hours per day, they lose as much of their life as 10 years. So there's a serious impact, like having less sleep, and sleep cannot be caught up on, unlike many people believe. So if you have a night of short sleep, that's it. You cannot catch up on it, right? And then, of course, time management, as most people would call it, a prioritization to minimize stress from work and daily responsibilities. Why did I cross out management here? The issue is not time management. The issue is prioritization of tasks, because I can manage my time, but if I don't prioritize the right tasks and the right things to do, then I'm still stuck at point 0, right? So what I always advise everybody is like to make a list of like 4 or 5 things that are important to you in terms of priority in your life, right? And I think especially a lot of times in corporate, we're being told, or we're being given the feeling, your job is the most important thing. We're paying you, so you better be grateful that you get your salary, and you better give us all that you got, because everything else, we don't need a life, right? Almost like that. Now, what I've noticed, especially since I've started my own company, is once I got clear on what I want in life, what's important to me, everything else started forming around that. I'll give you an example. We have clients from literally Hawaii to New Zealand, so all across the world. And I tend to travel a lot. I tend to do my work from wherever I want, ideally warm places, 20, 25 plus upwards degrees. And none of our clients ever had an issue with the time zone. If it was like a different one, and I typically try to have as well calls during like normal work hours, sometimes a bit earlier, sometimes a bit later in the day. But in general, it works out because I have confidence in my own abilities, and that I know I can only do my best work if I am feeling good. If I feel stressed and if I don't feel good, it has a direct impact on our client relationships and how they feel and the performance that they experience and that they get in the end, right? Of course, there's certain limits to this in the corporate world, but I hope I can show you a little bit of how you can manage that as well. Now, in terms of prioritization in your life, every one of you, let me know what's like one thing that's important to you outside of work. So we're now challenged with having to change and adapt in a much quicker way than the people that we grew up with, right? But when we become aware of like what stress actually is and what like any kind of fear is of changing it. Let's say you're afraid of changing that. I'm just going to make assumptions. This doesn't have to be true. But let's say you're afraid of changing it because maybe your boss is not going to like it or you might come late to work, right? Oftentimes, that is something that our brain makes up as a protection mechanism so we do not change. And if I was you in your case, what I would do is I would see if I can add one more day a week where I can spend time in nature in the morning. Is it possible for me to move a certain meeting to a later time? Is it possible for me to work half a day? I would start with something very, very small so that I can start feeding my brain proof that change is good, that change is safe, right? We often don't change because we are afraid of something is not going to feel safe or insecure, even though what we are doing keeps actually hurting us, right? And this is why it's also difficult for us to manage stress, because for a lot of people, stress is very common and it's even something that they grew up with. I grew up with a unhealthy family environment. Unfortunately, I love my parents dearly. I respect them and I love them. But it was not the best of me. So I grew up for the first 2 decades of my life experiencing so much stress every day that it was weird for me to have a day not being stressed, because that's all my body knew, right? So I had to like learn to break that habit of feeling safe when I'm not stressed, right? Now, let's move on. And this is where you need your pen and your paper. And I'm going to give you these exercises and ask you what to write down. I may or may not ask you to share it. You do not have to share anything at all. This is just for you and to get clarity, okay? So now we're going to get into what stresses you. Just list 3 of the most common stress situations that you experience. And feel free to relate this back to the poll that you chose. Maybe something in the workplace, maybe you're like me. I used to grow up with a mom who baked all the time, right? So I have a sweet tooth, right? So, but if I eat too much sugar, it stresses me out because sugar has a serious effect on the body, right? So just list 3 of the most common stress situations and be as specific as you can. So don't just write down meeting with boss last week. Write at least like 2 to 3 sentences of like what happens in that situation, and do it pen on paper, because that has us access different parts of the brain that are much more effective than if we just do it on the phone or on the computer. Okay? And don't think or judge. Most important, I'll give you 2 minutes. So just start writing now. Nobody's going to see this. This is just for you. Okay, awesome. When you have that, we'll move on to the next part. What's the corresponding emotion for these 3 stress situations? And to make this easier for you, I've put the wheel of emotions here, and I hope you guys can read that. It might be a bit small, but I hope you guys can read it still. In order to be able to release stress, we need to understand where it comes from and what emotion is associated with it. And the better we can name the emotions, the better our emotional vocabulary is, the easier we can release it. So just write down the 5 emotions that you associate with these situations. Don't judge it. Try to not think. Just take the first 5 ones that come to your mind or that you see on this picture. By the way, this is also a really helpful tool. It's called the Wheel of Emotions. If you have kids and you want to help them understand what's going on in their life, why they might be upset right now, right? All right. Now we did the bad part, and we did the difficult part. We listed down what we don't like, what stresses us out. Now, in order to switch, to change our emotional state from anything stressed, anything negative, to anything positive, we typically tend to need to work on 2 levels. One's on the body, and the second is the mind. If you learn to work on the body, it has a quicker effect on the mind than if you do it the other way around. Now, embodiment. What I want you to do is list 5 activities that bring you joy. Just write them down on your paper. Just list 5 activities that bring you joy. Again, don't think or judge. Just write it down. Could be cooking. I would, if you like to spend time with your family, I would make sure you really write down specifics around that. Is it that you like to watch TV with your kids? Is it that you like to play with your kids and your dog or whatever? The more specific, the better. And then next to each activity, list how often you do that a week. If you have some favorite activities that you feel like you actually are not doing even on a weekly basis, write down how often you do them in a month, on a monthly basis.
So what I was saying before is you guys are already starting to see what, like, the activities that actually bring you joy, how little you do them, right? And so if you just think about it, if I just asked you about it, your mind would have probably given you a response that doesn't even show you how little you do them, right? So this is why it's so important sometimes to write things pen on paper, because we just access different parts of our brain, right? Now, why do you think it is that you do some of these activities so little, even though those are the actual things that bring you joy? There are a lot of people wait with the stuff that they love doing to do it after work, but then first of all, remember, we suffer from information overload, right? And decision fatigue. So it's much easier for us to say no to an activity that actually would do us well in the evening than if we just did it in the morning. Because in the morning, we still have a lot more brain power and decision availability, right? So one of the ways to shift your way to find more calm and relaxation is to change the time when you do something, right? And that might mean making slight changes in the way you run the day, the way you run your relationships, your family, your work life, getting up a little bit earlier, going to sleep a little bit earlier, and so on, right? But with everything, I'd always recommend do not change everything at once, right? Make a small change. If it is that you want to get up earlier, don't just get up an hour earlier. Get up 5 minutes earlier, right? And then maybe use those 5 minutes to pray more, to meditate, to journal, just to sit and breathe. Whatever it is, like small things, right? Now, let me see if I can.
All right, there we are. Beautiful. Awesome. We're back at it. So let me share the slides. Now we had the embodiment of the activities, right? The next part, what I want you to do is the knowing. Oh, one more thing about the embodiment. Why that is so important that we shift into activities. When you were a child and you didn't like something, or maybe if you have children and they don't like something, what do? There is this famous book that's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it really pretty much explains that phenomenon, because when children are stressed, when children don't like something, they let it out in their fight or flight response. They scream, they cry, they throw a tantrum, they move their body. So all that energy in the arms and legs gets out, right? Now, the problem is when we grow up, but if you throw a tantrum right now, you might just lose your job, right? So when we are an adult, we can't just in the mall when we feel bad, the next mall and go like, ah, right? So, but that is how we were as children, how we dealt with that as children is still what works best for us as adults. So I'm not saying throw a tantrum, but the recommendation that I even got that from one of my doctors. Sometimes when you're at home, take a pillow and scream into it. The pillow is just there to not shock the people around you, right? And you might just warn the people around you as well. But just to scream into it, especially for women, that's important because we say even less than men what's on our mind, right? But it helps us get whatever is blocked in our throat out. It's the physical release of stress. Like a lot of my clients also feel like they have like a stiff jaw or it's like hurting here. And so typically the first things that we do is I help them scream and let it out, right? And the other thing that I even used to do when I was still at Google is I sometimes just went to the bathroom and then I just, did like shakiness with my arms, my legs. I just put on some dance music, and for like 2 to 3 minutes in the bathroom and nobody sees me, I just let it all out. Okay, so very much encourage you, if you feel stressed, find a space for yourself if you can, and then move a little bit physically, because it helps you let go of that kind of like weird energy that we're dealing with in these instances. No? Okay. So embodiment. Let's go on to the next one. Knowing. Now, this is extremely, extremely important because our brain is on the one hand a very smart machine, and on the other hand a little bit sneaky, because it just does what we tell it to do, which can be useful, but it can also be to our disadvantage. Because if we think about, like, if we made a mistake and then, or with maths, let's take maths as an example. It's quite a lot of people that say, I'm so bad at maths, right? Or I'm so bad at like remembering people's names, right? And what the brain does in that moment is like, yeah, you're bad at math. Let me show you why you're bad at math. So the brain always follows your instructions, which is why we should be so careful about the instructions we give our brain and the self-talk that we apply, right? So if I want to change something, I make sure that I start with the wording about what I'd want to be true, right? And some of you already heard that. I mean, it's affirmations. By now, it's a common thing. But I literally write down what it is that I want to feel, right? Let's say I'm very stressed in the meeting right now and I can't go anywhere. I would literally start like scribbling in my notebook. I'm like, I am calm. I am calm. I respond with kindness. I listen. Like I literally write down what I want to be feeling in that moment, right? And the importance here is that you write it in the presence and that you don't use the word don't or not, because the word don't or not does exactly the opposite to our brain. Our brain doesn't really understand that. That's what, like when you tell a child, don't touch the hot surface, what does the child do? It touches the hot surface. Yes. So we want to phrase it positively. So in your notebook right now, write down at least like 5 thoughts or affirmations that bring you joy. And I listed down a couple here for you that you're welcome to copy if you want to, or just write the ones that are best for you, for these like situations that stress you. Just write down 5 sentences. Make sure at least each sentence has about 5 to 6 words. Make sure it's present tense. So like I am, I eat, I make. I do not use can, I do not use want, I do not use will. Everything is in the present tense as if it is already that way. The reason this is so important is that 80% of our thoughts every day are subconscious. We do not consciously control them. So that's why we want to make sure we at least control the 20% that we can, so that they then have an effect on the remaining 80% of how we react and act during the day. Okay, the important thing with this is, again, practice. Writing it down every day if possible. There's almost nothing that I write down if I don't do it like for like 2 weeks where I don't see the results, right? So the one thing I want to do right now is put your hand, left or right hand, doesn't matter, on whatever you just wrote now. And then just close your eyes for 30 seconds and just feel into what you wrote. Feel how it feels to achieve your goals. How it feels to feel worthy of achieving your goals. Feel how good it feels to drive in traffic, right? Feel how good it feels if you wake up in the morning and you organize your workday, right? Or you get to spend time in nature. Just feel into that a little bit. Beautiful. Feel free to open your eyes. Awesome. Now, we can write things down, we can think about them, but the feeling helps us embody everything. We want to create the chemical reaction in our bodies, right? In order for your body to follow suit. Now, why do we need the mind and the body? The Body Keeps the Score is a famous book written by Bessel van der Kolk, and it expresses what exactly happens. Any kind of trauma and stress that we experience and we do not let go keeps being stored in our cells until we let it go. And any negative emotion that we feel translates into a bodily response within 17 seconds. So if your boss comes and stresses you out with a new deadline and you do not change it within 17 seconds, you already stored it in your body, right? This is why it's so important to learn how to switch, right? Now, while we may think something of the past doesn't bother us anymore, our body tells us differently. Any ailments that we have, any diseases that we experience are typically prolonged or extended expressions of what we still hold on to. Because otherwise, the body always wants to be in a healthy state. So your body always strives for health and wants to like fight off any bacteria, any viruses. But if those hold on, if you have a virus, it means that your body has been too clogged up, too stressed to let go of it naturally, right? So the more we learn to let go, the less sick we actually get. And I actually haven't been majorly sick in like the last 3 years. So this is like, it just makes life much easier, right? Unless we truly relieve something from the body, we will keep repeating stress and trauma because our body thinks that anything that we've experienced, we know is safer than the unknown. So we have to continuously teach it that the unknown that we want is actually better than the bad known that it has, right? And that happens only by repetition over and over again. Because again, it feels safer for the body to repeat past stressful events than to venture into new, better territory. We all probably have known that. For some of us, it might already be some time ago. But if somebody keeps falling for the wrong girl or guy, or if somebody always has a job that's like bad or feels like, you know, stressful, that means we're repeating certain patterns that we haven't solved yet, right? But it doesn't mean that we have to keep doing that. There's always ways out, right? But it's just like being aware of what's happening. Now, how do we release stress from the body? How do we actually do that? First of all, practice awareness. And like one of my coaches says, there's no blame, shame, guilt, or judgment. This is most important, right? We oftentimes judge ourselves for feeling bad. We judge ourselves for feeling stressed. And we're like, I shouldn't feel this and I shouldn't do this. And blah, blah, blah. But truth is, we're all just human beings. We're all just human beings, right? And we're doing the best that we can at any point in time. Now, what I want you to do is, again, put both your feet on the ground, both feet on the ground. Sit upright, but lean back in your chair so that it's like a comfortable, upright position. Right? And what I had to learn here is that when I started doing this, I was like, but my back is hurting. So if you feel your back hurting, and I've talked about this with like several people, they're like, yeah, your back is hurting when you're sitting in a comfortable position because your body isn't used to comfort anymore. Right? So if your back is hurting right now, it just means it needs to be retrained, right? And you know, a chiropractor can help with that. There's multiple ways to work on that, right? Because you have to relax your body first so your mind can follow. If you think, oh, I'm calm, I'm calm, I'm calm, your body might follow eventually. But if your body goes first, then your mind can follow. And so the best way is to sit in a relaxed and open position. So y'all probably know a little bit of like body language, right? If I sit like this, it means like I'm, you know, crossed out and I might not want to do something. So make sure your hands are like firmly on your legs. A simple trick is if you have both hands on your left hand on your left knee and your right hand on your right knee, that helps you feel more like grounded and safe, right? So that's one of the quickest ways. If you're in a stressful meeting, make sure you change your body posture so that you sit here, that you're confident, and that you start to like relax, right? So you literally relax into it. Now, as the second to third to last exercise, I'll do this shortly with you. We'll do a shortened version, but I want to give you an idea of how to relax your body so that you're able to replicate that later as well. So again, in that same position that you are, close your eyes, and we're going to do an exercise for like 2 to 3 minutes. And once you've closed your eyes and you have your left hand on your left knee and your right hand on your right knee, just take a deep breath, breathe in, and then just breathe out longer than you breathe in. And then just start becoming aware of your toes. You can wiggle them a little bit. You can start becoming aware of your feet. Are they touching the ground? Are they maybe in shoes right now? Just become aware of where they are. And then start becoming aware of your calves, your legs. Are they firmly placed on the chair? Do you maybe want to readjust yourself a little bit? Start feeling how you're sitting on the chair. The chair comfy? Is it harder, softer? Start feeling your lower back. Maybe you feel a little bit of tightness, or maybe it's relaxed completely. Start feeling your spine. And you can always, at any point in time, also take a deep breath in and then let it go out through the mouth, kind of like a sigh of relief. And then start filling up your shoulders, between your shoulder blades. Maybe you want to adjust your shoulders a bit to hang, let them hang a bit more. There's nothing you need to guard or do or be right now. Your shoulders can just be relaxed. And then feel how your arms are resting on your legs. They feel a bit tight, just wiggle them a bit. And then feel your neck. And feel your mouth, your face. You can give your mouth a little smile.
So what I'll do is I'll record the meditation that I want to take you through. I don't know how far we got, as I had my eyes closed too. I'll record it and I'll send it to you guys separately so you can experience it properly. I'll also send you the slides so you have all the. This has been a little bit more chaotic than I had planned it from my end. So again, apologies. And now, let's see. There is. Yeah, we'll do kind of like one last thing, and then I'll send you. You have all the notes, everything, and all the awareness that we kind of like practiced. The one thing, like over and over again, has shown to be of help for people as well, and to really express is gratitude. So not just like expressing gratitude, like Mama said, hey, I'll just go to my team and tell them how awesome they are, right? That can help us as well. But oh no, don't worry, I'm not getting stressed. I'm just like slightly frustrated at inefficiency, because efficiency is one of my core values, right? I'm Austrian originally, so yeah. But that doesn't mean we can't go through this and finish this. So gratitude. So this is one of the main things that I also do. I try to do it almost every second day. I'm not perfect. I can't do it every day, but write a list of gratitude. And one of my coaches also challenged me in the past, and he called it the stack of 50. So you literally sit down and you write down 50 things you're grateful for. Ideally, you first start off with 50 with things in the last 24 hours that you're grateful for. And then if you can't think about anything anymore, you go to the last week. When you finish the last week, you go beyond the last month, and then you'll, right? So I'll put this in the slides. You can also do this exercise on your own later. Just kind of like to finish up that session. As an example, what are like one or two things that you are grateful for in the last 4 hours? And remember, those can be really small things. Sometimes for me, it's that I had a good smoothie, I had a good tea, and so on, right? What are like one or two things you are grateful for? And feel free to mute yourself.